You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we are your hosts for this show. When's the last time we were on? Did we do a show last week? I'm trying to remember now. It's like I'm totally lost.
It wasn't last week. It was the week before.
It was the week before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. All right. Because I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, it seems like it's been a minute since we've been on.
Yes, it's been forever. It feels like forever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and it always does. I mean, if we don't do a show, like at least one show every week, it does completely feel like it's been a month or something. Ted's with us. He says, looking forward to tonight's episode. Well, actually, the night's episode.
We're looking forward to this too. This is actually probably going to be really fun for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's either going to be a really cool, insanely fun show, or it's going to be an epic disaster, because what we decided to do in our infinite wisdom, it's funny that, our thumbnail is Yoda this time, is we thought, you know what, we were going to just do this whole, like, what was it, like 6 lessons or something that we learn. It even says it right there. See, right down there. 6 lessons we learned from Star Wars. But instead of doing what we would normally do, which is maybe each of us would give 3 or we would talk about it or whatever, we were like, you know what? Let's just do it live on the air. Mm-hmm. Let's just maybe, talk about some of the things that, Star Wars has taught us over the years and make it kind of a discussion thing. And then maybe try to narrow it down to 6 that we think are the ones. There's no like graphical help this time, no tier lists, no PowerPoint stuff, none of that. It's just us talking about it and then seeing if we can, narrow down. And then Ted says, and I thought it was last Monday myself. Yeah, I mean, it's it's been crazy, man. I mean, it's just been, there's a lot going on. So, I mean, I think that our schedule may be a little erratic at times. But hey, we will always do our best to try to bring you a show. Pre-recorded, live. We're trying to get it out there as much as we can. All right, well, I guess we should probably dig into this and see what we come up with. So, I mean, obviously, you just look at this picture, right? And you have that whole do or do not, there is no try, which,
yeah.
I mean, I can honestly say that that's something that I still think about a lot.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm going to approach something and I'm thinking to myself, all right, man, I'll try to do this. And then I think of that line and I'm like,
yeah,
maybe I should commit myself to just doing it, because the problem, and I think this is what Yoda was trying to say, is that if you come with the mindset that you're going to try, you actually increase your chances of failure.
Yeah, and you almost leave yourself room for sometimes like you won't give your best because like you just fall back and say, oh, I tried it. I gave the old college try, as they like to say.
Plausible deniability, man. It's like, right, yeah, that little 10%,
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can't say I didn't try, so whatever.
Right, or, I'll give it a shot. It's almost like you're tempering expectations if you say that.
Yeah, but if you just like, you know what, I'm going to do it, it's a commitment to something. It's
That's
like,
it.
You know what, I'm going to do this, and it's like, no matter what, we're going to see this through, and that's the mentality that we need to have. What about a lot of stuff in life? And I think that's always one of the greatest lessons in Star Wars is just that Luke is doubtful and he's trying to do this. He's like, well, he went the way he said it. He's like, well, I'll try. He's like, no, do not. There is no try. And it was just like, because he already can tell that, he probably could sense it too, that he wasn't certain of himself. And that's the thing about it being a Jedi, or even being a human being. Like, people respect confidence, and that's kind of where Yoda kind of was trying to lead Luke to saying like, look, if you're gonna walk down this path, you got to be confident in yourself. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, if I were Luke, I would have just been like, yeah, you mean like how you and Obi-Wan confidently destroyed the entire Republic? I mean, it's. I
Hey,
mean,
they were confident though.
there was right. There's a little bit of a track record problem, I think, at that point. It's like, yeah, all right, do or do not. Yeah, why don't you tell me what happened back, when
We
Palpatine took
confidently
over?
held these
Yeah,
secrets from you that Luke that
yeah.
Vader's your father.
Did you do back then? I'm thinking you tried and failed, buddy.
Well,
Let's
yeah, they
let's let's ask Bail Organa when you were like freaking out, like one.
hurry.
Exactly. But Luke didn't have obviously the benefit of that, that whole exchange readily.
Exactly.
But, just saying. And neither did we actually when this whole thing first came out, right? Because that was an Empire
True.
Strikes Back thing. And,
Absolutely.
hindsight is 2020. Ted basically says, a lesson I learned from Star Wars is that just because someone is in charge of something, that doesn't mean they understand it all. Or it at all. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, we ran across this a lot back when we were in the schools.
Oh,
And,
yes.
because you have to understand, though, that, and this is something that I grew to understand as I got older that I didn't necessarily understand when I was younger. And that is, I mean, I kind of understood it. I didn't really start to grasp it, though, until I was at least in my mid 30s. And that is, when people are put in charge of something, they don't necessarily have to know the ins and outs of it. That's the job of the people that are under them. Their job is to basically steer the ship, keep it running, and provide the people who are under them everything they need to be successful.
Mhm.
So, I mean, but again, and this is going back into our whole Yoda, Obi-Wan, everything else, right? Is that they were overconfident in what they could do, and unfortunately, they didn't see what was right in front of them until it was too late. So that's that's basically what it is. And of course, he had the hashtag replace Kathleen Kennedy, which again, and this is why I bring this up, because if she would just stick to running the studio, or she should have gotten like an actual studio head and just been a producer. But if she wasn't going to do that, she should have just stuck to running the studio and not trying to micromanage the projects. And I think that
Right.
that's where things really fell apart.
Yeah, she took on too much, I think, in my in most people's opinion.
Yeah. And that's a valid lesson too. And unfortunately, that's a lesson that we're learning from outside the Star Wars universe.
Mhm.
I mean, it's one of those things where, now we're talking about Kathleen Kennedy and stuff. We're not in, excuse me, the actual universe anymore. We're actually like in the periphery. But yes, if she just stuck to running the studio, given Filoni and, maybe J.J. Abrams, all those guys, everything that was needed, I think, yes, the whole franchise probably wouldn't be in the situation it's in now. But here we are.
All right. Yeah, I'll definitely agree. I think mine would be um from Phantom Menace. Um, it's make sure I was trying to make sure I quote it correctly. Be mindful of the future, but not at the expense of the moment.
Ah, yes. Another little nugget from Qui-Gon.
Yes. And I love that just because, a lot of times we have our, sights set on, you know, future endeavors and things like that, that you forget to enjoy the present moment and really just take in, the journey, the process of what's happening, whether it's, working out, whether it's something at, a project you're looking at work, or, a position you're looking for at work. You have to be mindful of that and always, be looking towards that, but don't lose sight of what's in front of you right now, chasing the future. And that's something that I always have to remind myself to do, because, I'm constantly dreaming about, the future. And sometimes I will lose sight of, like, okay, but what are you doing today, right now, to help you even get there? You're so far into the future that you're not taking into account what's going on in the present moment. How is it affecting the people around you? How is it affecting you? Um, and it is the best course of action. So that's definitely one of my favorites from Star Wars.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I mean, because that's something that, again, we tend to forget, right? We get so fixated on the end goal that we forget that the goal is achieved by the steps.
Hmm.
So if you're just sitting there, it's almost like the concept. It's funny when I'll play games like Skyrim or any of these like RPG games, you feel like you've accomplished so much because you've done all these quests and you've gotten so far in the game, and then you stop and think like, no, actually all I've done was like sit in this chair for 12 hours. Like I've really accomplished nothing, but yet you feel that way. And that's the danger of those games, and that could be the danger of sometimes, the goal setting is that
Hmm.
you're you're planning. It's almost like these people that, in businesses and stuff too, is they spend so much time in meetings and planning and all that that nobody actually does anything. So you're pretty much where you started. You have to balance it because you also don't want to rush head first, which would be another lesson I would say, comes from Star Wars. At least it's one of the ones that I realize is that, you have some characters like Han Solo and all those guys that want to just, you know, rush in head first, or Wrecker,
Hmm.
from the
Yep.
Bad Batch. And
Hmm.
sometimes that's actually the right thing to do. You don't want to keep planning and thinking about the problem. At some point you have to take action. But, the flip side of that is that you also have to plan your action carefully and accordingly. And I think that that's something that you look at a lot of characters in Star Wars. Like I said, I just mentioned Han Solo and Wrecker, but you could really, you know,
Well, a great example would be that with Poe. When we saw, because that
yes,
was
yeah,
a great lesson that he had to learn when he never said, "Oh, you can't just jump into an X-wing and blow something up every time."
right.
And he really had to learn that, like, there's sometimes a strategic plan, and you may not be able to see it right now, but trust me, it's it's a reason why we're doing this.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's actually one of the things that the Last Jedi did very well.
Yeah.
Is Poe's journey in
Hmm.
all of this. Now, of course, a lot of that was established in the Force Awakens, but the Last Jedi is really where he had to go from being that loose cannon, maverick Han Solo like character to somebody who actually thinks about the consequences of this stuff, you know, because
Hmm.
when you're tasked with leading, you have to think of all the players in the game, not just
Yes.
yourself. And so yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just, oh man, and there's probably so many characters like that, I mean, you also look at like Vader, who's very methodical,
Hmm.
versus say Darth Maul, who tends to just rush right in.
Or even Vader, before he became Vader, when he was Anakin,
Oh yeah.
that was Anakin's problem. Anakin was ready just to jump in because he knew he was the chosen one. He had all this power, and he was ready to showcase it all. And it's like, yeah,
That's actually a good
whatever,
point because when you really think
you
about
know.
it, and I'm sure that part of that came from the limitations of the suit, where you started realizing this is true even in the expanded, like toward the end of the expanded universe when they had that Vader Rising book.
Mhm.
That basically dealt with, and they more or less canonized it. I mean, they didn't canonize it directly, but they did take a lot of stuff from that. Like when he was in the suit, he was really clumsy and clunky. He had to relearn, not just how to move with agility, but also he had to take on some new lightsaber forms and things like that because and of course he made a lot of modifications to the suit. But yeah, I think the suit is definitely the catalyst for him maybe taking it a little easy and not rushing into things. That and experience.
Yeah, well, I would say before the suit, I think the suit ended up being the icing on the cake, as it were. I think the real catalyst would be the duel that he had with Obi-Wan and Mustafar. When he's like, Anakin, I have the high ground. he's giving him the play. Like, I'm giving you the playbook, right? Anakin, I have the high ground, and Anakin doesn't care. And even Obi-Wan said, "Don't try it. Like, I know what you're thinking. Don't try it." Anakin tries it anyway, just because he thinks he's that good, and he gets dismembered. And then we also see it in the Obi-Wan series where we see those cool flashback scenes with them sparring, so to speak. And once again, Obi-Wan is kind of, stop being so impulsive. He's like, "Oh, I beat you." He's like, "What, you just gave up a bunch of different position?" And then he showed him like that he lost. And even in that moment, because Vader was so fixated on trying to catch Obi-Wan, he realized he got duped when, they were in the opposite ship. And it showed like what Obi-Wan was trying to teach him. And then you could see that Vader was remembering the lesson that he had, like, "Oh, he got me again, like, son of and it's just, it's one of those moments where it's just, sometimes life has to keep bringing certain lessons around until you actually get it. And
Yeah, that's true
um,
too, right? Where you
I
don't
think
always
that's,
get it the first time. Even if you fail, you don't always learn from it
yeah.
immediately. Sometimes it
Hmm.
takes that reinforcement. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's on you.
Is it really my turn?
Hmm.
I thought I did I did the Han Solo Vader and all that stuff. Well, it doesn't matter. It's not
Well,
like
well, I guess if you want to,
you
I
know.
think you were piggybacking off
I was
mine though,
piggybacking. How?
off the off my whole
No, 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 no. You were talking
Qui
about
Gon.
being mindful of the president and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I was talking about, at first, I gave the Han Solo Wrecker thing where I was like, don't rush in. Sometimes you have to plan and things like that. Now, granted,
Okay, so that was your okay.
yeah, you
Okay.
could, I mean, I guess you could sort of spin that into your thing. But yeah, no, that was my other one. I mean, again,
Okay.
it's just like, it doesn't even have to be like we have to come up with the equal amount either. I mean, like I said, we're doing this on the fly. I mean,
Sure.
we totally didn't prepare this at all, which, if it's not painfully obvious by now, I don't know. But, because we thought it would be fun, right? Because, like you said, when you had this, you said, look, let's make it like exactly like our discussions.
Yeah, like this is what we.
This is
So
how
for
we
those
would
of you,
be. Yeah.
yeah, in the studio, like when we first started coming up with this idea of this show, we would sit in our TV studio that we worked in, and we would just have these conversations, these sporadic conversations about Star Wars, and this is the kind of conversations we would have, and this is the way we would have it. So we thought we'd just once again kind of go back to our roots on this one.
Yeah, kind of give an unfiltered thing, right? I mean,
Yeah,
still
not
mindful
so
that we're,
structured.
yeah, right. Because I mean, we still are posting a show that people want to actually watch, but this is probably the closest it's going to come, and we'll probably do this more often.
Hmm.
Plus, I mean, quite frankly, it's less work, right? I mean, it's like you don't have to put as much into it, which there's probably a lesson there too, but.
Simplicity is the key to brilliance.
Exactly, the Bruce Lee thing. And that doesn't
Yes.
count because it's not part of the
Yeah, I
franchise. So you
know.
can't. Now you could probably find a Star Wars character that maybe had a similar thing going.
Right. Okay.
So far we're at 2 each basically.
Yes. Okay. Unlearn what you have learned.
Oh,
Um,
that's a good one. I forgot about that one.
yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. Just because a lot of times, for me, like I said, I try to make these things personal. Um, you learn things a certain way, and then sometimes the way you learned it, you may have to relearn it a different way because you're older now, or you have more experience, and so there's not always one way to do something. So sometimes you have to unlearn what you've learned. And then also, I always look at it as, the application of what you've learned. Like, okay, you've learned it, but now you need to unlearn it in the sense of like either teach someone else or you have to exercise it to show that you've learned it. But for me, um, I think that a lot of things that we've learned in our lifetime, especially like growing up as kids, there are certain. I was just talking to some of my friends about this the other day. Like, there's certain rules that we had growing up that's like, okay, is that still applicable today? Like, does that still make sense in today's, like, for that, the world that we lived in 1980, 1990, maybe the early 2000s? Yeah, that might have been, the way to do something. But then when you think about it, it's like, eh, is that really the best way to do it? So sometimes you have to unlearn those ideals and philosophies that you grew up on and be open to learn it a different way to be more effective.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I often go back to the teaching thing too, right? Is there's a couple of different things in there. I mean, number one, most of the time when we learn to do something, we learn either just by doing it and figuring it out ourselves, or maybe there was a particular way that somebody taught us to do it. And we just go, okay, this is how you pull off whatever this is. And you
Hmm.
really have no reason to deviate from that. However, when you have to teach somebody else, not only do you have to break down and come up with, well, why do I do it this way?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times it's based on just how you were shown and you never even thought about it.
You even thought to question it. Yeah.
Never thought to, well, not even questioning it, just thought about, well, why am I doing this particular thing in this particular order? Like, what's the point?
Hmm.
Like, why? So you have to break down, what you're doing. And then there's two other things you have to do. One, you have to now try to convey this to multiple different learning styles. And so now you might have to modify things so people get it. And then in the process of doing all this, which is why I always say you learn best by teaching others to do something,
Hmm.
now you start to explore the other ways. Because now you start to go, okay, this is a way to do this, but is it the best way? I want to find the
Right.
best and most efficient way.
Hmm.
Now that might be the way you've been doing it. Maybe the person who taught you was like right there,
Early
right?
on.
Because
Yep.
yeah, because I mean in a lot of cases, that a person with more experience has probably already tried and failed a million different ways and this is a way that they discovered was the best way, but it could have been the best way for them and their strengths and weaknesses too. So you have to temper that. So that's one aspect of it. But, the other one, like you said, just from purely that line, is that if you find out you have been doing something incorrectly, well, now not only do you have to try to learn the correct way, you have to unlearn the incorrect way.
Mm.
And that could be, yeah.
Very true.
So the whole unlearn what you have learned is a little bit easier said than done, I think, a lot of times.
Oh
But,
yeah. Oh
but
yeah.
oh man, now I just realized now I got to come up with one, don't I? I wasn't even, I wasn't even thinking about that. Um, wow, because there's so many things. I mean, when you stop and think about it, you got the expanded universe, which opens up a whole nother thing. You
Hmm.
have obviously the 9 films. I think from the sequel trilogy, we learned make a plan.
Yes,
I'm
definitely.
I'm going with that.
Yep, and
I'm
communicate
I'm
with
I'm
everybody.
I'm going with that actually. I
Yep.
mean, I'm not doing that just out of laziness. I mean, I think that that's really a thing is that when you stop and think about the fact that you had people like J.J. Abrams, you had Lawrence Kasdan, even the guy that wrote Empire Strikes Back, writing at least The Last Jedi, and I think he had something to do with The Rise of Skywalker. Um, you had like a bunch of these people that were, I mean, really at the top of their game, and they come up with the sequel trilogy. Why? Because they were more or less making up as they went along. And so sometimes, and this goes back to what Ted was saying, is that sometimes you can actually learn things not just from the in universe, the characters themselves, but also the behind the scenes part too.
Mhm.
Because, we all learn storytelling and all this stuff from Lucas. I mean, when you watch Star Wars, you were basically getting some of the best storytelling techniques. We didn't necessarily realize it at the time, but that's really the case, and
Yeah.
and that's I mean, if you want an in-universe one, basically one of the things that you pretty much learn is if you want something done right, sometimes you have to do it yourself. You know, how many times did Vader, Palpatine, all these guys would get one of their minions or something to do something, and it would just keep failing. And
Mm,
eventually it's like, you know what? All right, I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to take care of it. Vader lands on Hoth. You know,
mhm,
Ozzel came out of light speed too soon. Now he blew the surprise, so now I'm going to have to go down and fix it. I probably should have done it in the first place. And
mhm.
that's, I mean, you do have to know when to delegate, sure. But sometimes, you just have to do it yourself.
When you don't, when they, minions fail you, you choke them. That's another lesson.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like, right
Now,
now, I'm not so
what
sure
is
the second half of that lesson is necessarily the way to go, right? Like, okay, well, if
what
somebody
did you
fails you,
learn?
kill them. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely. I'm sort of glad in retrospect that hasn't happened to me because, hey, man, there's,
Right. Yeah, plenty of times I could have definitely been choked. Um, and rightfully so. Um, I think I'm gonna go with a classic one of fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, and not necessarily talking about that sequential of emotions. However, um, I think it's just a reminder of things lead to other things, and you have to be kind of mindful of where um, you're placing your thoughts. Uh, One doesn't have to look farther than this past election, where and I've seen it where people, if you voted for a particular person, and they found out that you voted for that particular person, it's like you're basically the antichrist all of a sudden, or you're like, how could you? Why would you vote for that? And you're almost um, ostracized, or excommunicated from, some circles. People will unfriend you and
oh,
things like
yeah.
that. And it's
Yeah, it's
just like,
bad. Real bad, real
yeah, and it's just
toxic.
like just because someone had an opinion or their views are different, and although people have different views, you still have to respect them. You still have to try to understand and try to learn and try to figure out, like, even though I might not agree, let me find out why this person feels this way. Let's take that as a learning moment. But then a lot of times, we take our personal feelings, and then that leads to another thing. It's like, oh well, now I hate this person because I hate the person that they voted for, so now I have to hate you. And then that leads to me going off of people at work, because now I'm looking at everybody at work like, oh, you probably did this. And it just starts that slippery slope of ideals and thoughts. And a lot of people really just aren't being mindful of their own emotions and mindful of how it's affecting them and other people. And so I think that that's part of the problem in this world, quite frankly. And I think a lot of people could use this lesson of just be mindful of how your thoughts can slowly and sometimes quickly take you from one place to another, and you don't even know how you got there. 5 or 10 years from now, some of those same people, like, are completely different people because 5 years ago they started having these types of emotions and didn't check it properly. Now they're bitter old people who are cantankerous, and no one wants to be around you, and you can't. And now you think everyone's the problem. It's like, no, you're the problem, because you didn't check how you were handling certain situations.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, you could almost go into, and that's one of the things that I thought was done so brilliantly in these films, the light side, dark side contrast
Yeah,
is that, what are a lot of the things on the light side? Empathy, patience,
yeah.
controlling your emotions,
Hmm.
those kinds of things. And then, of course, the dark side is the opposite of that, but it's also the quicker and easier path, which is what a lot of people would take. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I can get all this immense power in, like, a quarter of the time. Well, I'd rather do that, but not realizing that it actually consumes you in the end. It burns you out like a nova or something. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really cool things like within the, the Force and the Jedi, the Sith, and all that. And I mean, obviously, look, when a lot of lessons come from a lot of that conflict, but a lot of it too can come from, even the war side of things.
Yeah.
Like for instance, one of the big ones that Return of the Jedi. I mean, it was kind of an allegory to the Vietnam War, where it was like, okay, you had the Empire who had these like technological marvels and superior in every way, and they were beaten. Why were they beaten? They were beaten for a number of reasons. They were overconfident. They
Arrogant.
relied too much on their technology. So when they faced basically a moon full of like
Teddy
cracked out
bears.
teddy bears,
Oh, meth
or
bears.
meth bear, yeah, the little meth bears on Endor. That almost sounds like something David would say. By the way,
Yes.
that's
That is definitely a Davidism.
speaking of influence, right? Like I would be the one, they're called Ewoks. This is what they are. Now I'm the one saying it, right? Yeah,
Right.
you get these like methed out teddy bears, and you have armor that seems to do like absolutely nothing.
Right.
It's like you
Just
get
looks
hit,
cool.
right? You get hit a little bit with a rock and nothing. It's like, why even wear this stuff? It's got to be hindering you. Just like wear leather. I don't know. I mean, it's just crazy,
Go
but
back to
it's
go back to the you know, like the knight armor with the whole steel
oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is that I mean, look, the stormtroopers look really threatening, and it's too bad that it became the whole like they can't hit anything. I mean, there's this one YouTube video that's hilarious where I mean, Doug sent it to me. I've seen it before though,
Mhm.
where it somebody made like this fan film thing, and it basically what it is like the stormtroopers are all at the ophthalmologist or optometrist or whatever. They're getting their eyes checked, and then they get like their eyes fixed, and suddenly then they go through like all the scenes, but they
Mhm.
had made it to where they're just like nailing everybody, and I mean it's hilarious. It's really I should send it to you. It's really funny. Where it's like all they needed to do was get like their eyes adjusted, and boom, now they're
Oh, they're
these
fine.
now they're fine. Because again, they look threatening, but then after a while it becomes a joke. Now that's why I was kind of happy that they brought the Death Troopers in, because it's like, okay, these guys, they don't
Mhm.
miss.
Exactly.
And they look threatening too. They look even more threatening than regular stormtroopers. So I mean, I digress a little, but you know, that's a big lesson too. And that's a classic storytelling thing, right? It's almost like the David and Goliath thing. It's like the big technological evil group versus the more primitive, group, and then the primitive group overcomes.
Yeah.
And that again, I mean, that was kind of an allegory for the Vietnam War when Lucas wrote it, but it's still kind of a classic thing too.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And I like the
Uh.
fact, by the way, that you actually pulled a couple from the prequel trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I
Nothing
mean,
from any of the TV series, though,
uh,
huh?
there might be some to come. I think my last one. Well, I won't say my last one, but um. Oh,
Oh,
Obi-Wan.
well, I could give you a big lesson. I need to charge my light before the show. I just
Right, and
realized
then
my
like
blue.
Obi-Wan
Yeah.
on the Death Star when his lightsaber kept going
Oh
out.
yeah. Right. Oh man, that was so funny. And
Uh,
I don't think he fixed that in the special edition.
he didn't. I mean,
It's
he
like,
did a
why
little.
would
Well,
you?
he did, but then it still kind of did it at the very end.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't know why
like
he left it in there, but
I don't know, because he has a sense of humor like that.
I would say my Obi-Wan would be who's the fool or the one who follows him.
Oh yeah, that's a big one, man. You know what? I'm surprised I didn't think of that one, because that's something I've quoted that to people.
Hmm.
Like when people are trying to
Yep.
like trash me for a bad idea, but that they're going along with it or whatever, I'd bust that one out. I don't think they realize that's what it was from.
Yeah. But also, it's just a life lesson too, because um, you have to hold yourself accountable for some things, and
Yep.
hey, okay, yeah, this person is foolish, but I follow them, and
Right. I'm like right there with them.
I'm
So,
right there with them, so I can't just necessarily trash this
well, I
person.
think, you know what I think it is? I think it's when people realize that, they were led down either a wrong, incorrect, whatever path, or they just,
Hmm.
whatever it is, wherever that would apply. I think the reason why they're more mad at themselves, but they're taking it out on the person
Hmm.
because, they can't believe they were duped. Like a recent thing I remember, usually like I never fall for any of these scams, right? You see this. I mean, older people, I mean, things will pop up on their computer and they'll click on it. Wait, you mean I didn't win an iPad? That kind of thing. And it's like now
Right.
they've got some virus and it's completely hopeless trying to get it out of there. And it's it's just one of those things where you're just kind of like, okay, what an idiot, right? But here I
Hmm.
am. So a couple years ago, I was on Facebook, and a lot of times, I bought stuff off of like not marketplace, but like when you're scrolling through and like ads will pop up and you'll
Hmm.
do the whole like shop now thing.
Yeah.
Well, I did that. Well, okay, so Bed Bath and Beyond was going out of business at the time. And I saw an ad, but the prices were really good. Like like insane. Now, I thought because, well, Bed Bath and Beyond is going out of business. I figured it was like a closeout sale. They had been going out for a while. I figured, okay, well, maybe they're getting really desperate. So I end up ordering this stuff, which I never received ever.
Hmm.
Credit card was charged for it, never got the
Oh wow.
merchandise. The charge was like somewhere in like China or something. Like, I'm like, oh man, it was only $70, but still. It
Right.
was
Still.
it was
Right.
one of those things where I'm like, "Man, you know what? That's just I can't." So I had to freeze the credit card. I mean, it just it was really again, it's almost like when you get into an accident, the accident's bad enough, but it's actually almost worse what you have to go through afterwards.
Yeah.
Just all this stuff or even like identity theft. It's like, "Great, now I got to go and cancel my cards. I got to get a new, whatever it is."
Then you gotta replace all the sites that you used at, and now
Yeah.
you gotta
I mean, it's a
put the new card
pain.
information. Yeah.
It's an absolute pain. So fortunately, it was a card that I hadn't really used. Like, it didn't really matter, but I did freeze it. But honestly, I felt so stupid. Like, I was just like, and again, and I think that that's what happens, right? When you fall for something or whatever, you're led down a path, and it's kind of like, who's more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it. It's like, well, the fool who follows it is mad because they were duped, and it's like they're taking it out. But yeah, I mean, that's a good one though. That's a really good one. I'm trying to think of like all the lines. Um, I mean, there's so many, right? I mean, there's just so many from like when you go back to the prequel trilogy. We even busted out the one from the sequel trilogy too, Poe
Ah.
and the whole leadership thing. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Nothing from the acolyte then.
Oh God. Y'all learned a lesson. Don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's another out of universe lesson, I would think.
um, I'll probably also say, let the past die.
Ah, the
Kylo.
Kylo.
Yeah.
Kill it if you have to.
Kill it if you have to. And
Yeah, I could
sometimes
see that. I could see that
we hold
because,
on to a lot of
yeah,
things from the past, man.
and
And
not only that, but the past can hold you back sometimes because you're holding on to it, right? So,
yeah, you got that friend that you was like, oh, well, we go back so far. I don't want to, just leave them out there. But it's like sometimes that person is literally like, I won't say literally, but figuratively weighing you down, or pulling you in a direction that is like, okay, it's hindering you from um, reaching your potential. And so sometimes you have to let that die, or certain, like I said earlier, certain ideals or certain uh, concepts, some things I've learned within the last probably, I'll probably say the last 2 years, where I've had like staunch, like I was really, really, really rooted in it and stuff. Like I practically was willing to die on the hill for it. And then I just realized I was wrong. And I was like, all this time, I really thought that this is the way. No pun intended. And and come to find out, it's like, man, I was so wrong about all of this. It's like, that's not how the force works. So, and I just really had to like, okay, let that die. I had to really just accept that, okay, I was wrong. I had to let those ideals die and pick up
Well, it's
the
difficult
new.
to admit when you're wrong too, I mean, it's like
Hmm.
you just have to, even facing that. I mean, that's kind of a pride thing, unfortunately, but and a lot everybody goes through it where, that's why it's always good to just look, if you're wrong, just admit it and admit it
Yep.
right away.
Yep.
Don't let it foster. But when you were speaking of that, I was even thinking in The Mandalorian, and I know there was some stuff in there that I thought was pretty good. Of course, I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah, that's always the trouble. It's like, that, and what's going to happen is like, we're going to get off
Oh
of here,
yeah,
and
I mean
then
after we go,
like,
there's like
man, I could
20
have
things.
said.
Well, even a lot of the stuff you brought up is stuff that not only do I, usually remember, but I mean it's stuff that I would literally quote or had significant impacts on me. I thought I was cool with that, do or do not, there is no try thing, and then it kind of fell from there, right? But I mean, because
Hey.
if you look at Luke, right? I mean, you got the hero's journey and all that stuff. There's definitely stuff that everybody learns from that. Not just the Dagobah stuff, but even if you go back to Hoth,
Hmm.
right? I mean, a lot of times you learn that okay, he was trying to get that lightsaber. The Wampa's getting closer. He was trying to get it. He was struggling. He was freaking out like, "Oh man, I got to get this thing. I got to get this thing." What did he do? He cleared his mind. He calmed himself, and then he reached out, and then the lightsaber came up to him. And
Right.
sometimes one of the things that I learned from that, which I still take with me, is that sometimes, when you're in like really chaotic or anxiety fueled situations,
Yeah.
you can't freak out. A lot of times you just have to, I mean, it's easier said than done, of course, especially depending on what it is, but sometimes, you got to calm down, just kind of clear your mind, and then a lot of times a solution or whatever will present itself, and you're actually more capable of doing it. Because if you freak out, it's not going to do you or anybody else any good. That was definitely something. Because I remember that
Yeah.
scene. That scene stuck with me for quite a while, actually, when I was a kid.
Well, not only that, but I mean, and that's being used numerous times, Eric, because in the Phantom Menace, you saw Qui-Gon when he's fighting Maul, and he had that moment when he got caught between those
Oh yeah,
the ray
right.
shields. He stopped, paused, meditated for a little bit to try to calm himself down, and then he went. I mean, granted, he still lost, but I mean, it wasn't because
Might
it
not
wasn't
be the
because he
best
wasn't good.
example.
Well, I mean, hey,
No, I
things
know,
happen,
I
right?
know. But I mean, because if you juxtapose that with Obi-Wan was just like, I mean, man,
Yeah,
he was just ready to go.
ready.
And as
Yeah,
soon as that thing opened, I mean, he
yeah.
just
He's went for
unleashed
broke.
on Maul, then cut him in half, then like sent him down the shaft. So I mean, in a
In
way,
the shaft. Yeah, exactly. you know, um,
but I mean that's true. He basically was taking the time to sort of chill out,
reevaluate.
calm his emotions, evaluate the situation. Exactly. I could see that.
Even with Obi Wan and A New Hope, when he surrendered himself to the Force, he's like, okay, he's fighting Vader. He realizes, like, look, I'm old now. I can't beat him, and he's super powerful now, and I could do more good from another point where I can be everywhere at any point in time and help Luke and still guide him from the other side, where age has no hold on me. And to be able to realize, to recognize that, and pause and consider, and then be able to allow yourself that moment for that to happen. And it also left Vader confused, because now Vader's like, okay, I didn't touch him, but he's gone.
Yeah, I was like, I remember during one of our other shows, I remember the joke we were making where he goes back
Oh
to
yeah,
Palpatine, like, "Hey
Palpatine,
man,
like, hey,
have
you
you
ever
ever
seen
seen
this?
this?" Like, look, a really weird thing happened when I was doing Obi-Wan. I'm just want to compare notes here, but yeah, well, and it doesn't necessarily change the outcome of the lesson you're talking about, but I don't necessarily think that. I mean, that's one way of maybe. I don't know. I don't necessarily think that he felt he was going to lose
No,
because
no, because it.
I don't think that he was thinking like, "Oh man, I can't really take this guy, I could do more good." I think he realized that yeah, that he would be more and he could do more good, cuz remember, he was learning all about being a Force ghost, and now Qui-Gon, of course,
Mm,
that wasn't his choice.
yeah, Qui-Gon kind of had to do it.
Qui-Gon just
He was kind of
yeah,
forced to do it, no pun
necessity,
intended.
yeah, yeah, necessity was the mother of invention there, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, either way it works. So now
Hmm.
here we got a Twitch viewer says, "Hello guys," basically. "Where is the sub button?" So now if you're on Twitch, uh I'm not really sure because obviously we have our Twitch channel. Um and usually I used to monitor Twitch all the time. Honestly I don't. But I think that I know it's on that page somewhere. I'm not really any help. Um I mean, if somebody else knows on YouTube how to do it on Twitch, I don't know. Of course, you can always hop over to YouTube and look up our channel too and subscribe there. But yeah, no, we're all about Twitch subscribers. So hopefully you figure it out. Maybe I can figure that out and put something on there later. I don't know. We'll have to do
Yeah,
that.
maybe like in a chat or something like
Yeah,
that.
or something like that. Ted says also, no matter how bad a Wookiee smells, always trust them anyway. Well, and of course, let the Wookiee win, right?
Yes.
That's another lesson that we can definitely learn without question. Han shot first.
Yes.
That's another one. No matter how much they try to you know.
Well, sometimes you just have to shoot first, man. Like, hey, if you already know what type of situation you're in, man, look, shoot first. Ask
But you know
questions later.
what? But he did give him money
Yep, he
and
did.
and
Like, hey, sorry,
apologize for the
apologize
mess.
for this. Yes,
Yes,
still be diplomatic.
exactly. So I think you just have to, think about some of these things because some of it are obvious, right? Because some of the quotes that we talked about tonight were pretty much straightforward. I mean, it was like kind of on the nose. I mean, they're meant to be lessons because
Yeah,
remember, Star
right.
Wars is made for kids, right? So it was
Exactly.
meant for that. Other stuff that we were talking about, and it's interesting when you said this earlier in the show that one of the benefits is when you come back to this thing at different ages. I mean,
Yeah.
forget the fact that they're continuing to make this stuff, but even if you just take, say, the first 6 movies and forget about the sequel trilogy because it's a little bit more recent, but as we've aged with this stuff and lived with this stuff for a while, you get more lessons because you're at a different place in life and now you're looking at some of this
Sure.
stuff differently. So, yeah, I think this is a really interesting exercise. Something we should probably do more, just wing it and have a discussion. I mean, I think people look, we got a Twitch person asking how to subscribe to us. I mean, maybe we're on to something.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's kind of an important part in Star Wars. If we really, we're always talking about the franchise and what it needs to do to move forward and what is Star Wars. I think that's a crucial element to Star Wars. Quite frankly, is the lessons. What can you teach that's going to stay with the generation? Because as you can see, so I'm like, we're well into our, adulthood, and we're still remembering, the quotes, the lessons that and what they mean to us. And so I think that for, our upcoming fans who still may be, you know, 9, 10, 11 years old, some 15, some 20, something like, what are the lessons that you're going to impart to this new generation that they can still uh, hold on to for the next 20, 40 years from now, because Star Wars is almost 50. So
Yep. Couple years away.
yeah, a couple of years away, it'll be 50 years old. So yeah, I think that's
Unless, of course,
a big
Kathleen
part.
Kennedy nukes the franchise by then.
Right, exactly. It dies before its 50th birthday.
Hey, Stranger
There's another
Things.
one.
What?
Just thought about it. So that's how Liberty dies, with thunderous
I
applause.
thought about that earlier, but it's like, that's just so... I mean, obviously, you can make a lot of comparisons throughout history, how that's happened.
Hmm.
But, I mean, that was another one of those things where, I think that, sure, yeah, you got to be careful about, something that might seem good might actually be bad or whatever. Because, again, Palpatine, he kind of spun everything. He made the Jedi look like the bad guy. And he
Yeah,
was really good at doing that. And, I think a lot of it, just I remember when we did that show about like his greatest powers or something. I remember a lot of people
yeah.
for some reason disliked that. I mean, it got a lot of views, but I think maybe people just didn't like where we were going with it because they expected maybe we were going to
Like
compare force lightning versus
power,
choking or
right?
something like that. But I mean, it was his strategy, his political mind that was actually his greatest power.
Oh, hands down.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you think of what he did, like how he was able to maneuver this, that was like
And
brilliant,
keep
man.
everybody out of it, not
Yeah.
even realizing it's him. I mean, dude, the
Yeah, how
guy's
do
a
you mask when you're in a room full of Jedis that you're a Sith Lord? Like, how do you mask all that
not
power that you have?
not
Forget
just
whether it's
Jedi, but
light or
Jedi
dark.
Masters
Right.
and the Grandmaster. Like
Right.
you,
Exactly. It's like, how do you do that?
exactly. Yeah,
Especially because you're not just like, say, a normal Sith Lord or something. You're like this super powerful Force user. Forget
yeah,
that he's even a Sith. Just no matter what he was so powerful. It's like, how do you mask all that?
true. And
Yeah.
being like you always say, when he's in vicarious situations and he has to have the Jedi rescue him,
Oh yeah.
he knowing that he has the power to, probably fix it a whole lot faster than them by just, but he has to play the doddering old man that, oh, and I'm weak and feeble, and what do you what do you want from me? Unhand me. I'm the supreme chancellor, and that like really.
Oh, I know. When he gets, I mean, he just so badly wanted to probably. I mean, that's why he kept, lightning Obi-Wan like right away because it's like, now I could do that. Or I mean, the best was when he's going to Yoda like, I've waited a long time
Long
for,
time for
because I'm
this.
sure
Yeah,
just to hold all that in and to basically contain not only that, but yeah, like we were saying in some of those other shows, and again tonight, it's when you have to pretend that you're less powerful than these other people, and you could probably fix it faster. And I always, what
that's
was
a little
that?
lesson. If you
What
think
was
about
that
it.
Godzilla monster? Like the Zillo or something like that?
Zillow, yeah,
Yeah.
Zilla Beast.
I mean, when you think about that thing was very close to killing him. I mean, it's because I always go to that episode,
I know.
not to digress here, because I know we were closing it up, but I got to say this. When he was basically having to be rescued and that thing was so close to killing him,
Hmm.
you have to wonder, like, if it was getting to the point where it was going to kill him, he would have had to have done something.
Hmm.
I
Because
mean, it's,
otherwise, everything dies. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, his whole plan goes. So it was really fascinating to me how he was able to maneuver things so he never had to reveal. Like, he never got into the position where it was like, okay, if I don't do something, either my plans are going to die or I am going to die. So I don't know. That's where my mind goes. That's why I host a Star Wars show. Because my mind goes to these places where, most people would
don't.
probably be like,
Yeah. What?
really? It's like, oh, you're single. Imagine that, It's like there's clues, there's context clues there, man. Just saying.
There are things.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that, you don't bust out right away,
At
Woman's
parties,
like,
yeah.
like, oh, so what do? You don't lead with I host a Star Wars show. Nothing makes you sound less desirable than saying, yeah, I host a Star Wars show on YouTube. We go live twice a week. You want to subscribe? See, I'm saying that on our show, and it just sounds so
Oh,
sad.
oh God. Man.
That's the other lesson that I learned from Star
Yeah.
Wars. Don't tell
Right,
people that you're into Star Wars. At least people of the opposite sex.
Yes, unless they reveal that they're Star Wars fans.
Yeah. I mean, hey, look, we got some, like Voyager. She watches
Voyager.
us. There's actually a contingent of females that watch our show and
Oh, yeah.
enjoy it. So, that's cool. I'm just saying, though, for the population at large, that's a good rule to live by. All right.
All right, man.
Like you said, man, it was fun. This is a lot of fun to do, and I hope that we do this a little bit more often, where we come up with these almost talking point topics that we can just discuss.
Fly off the cuff. Yep.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. Again, in the comments section, leave us a lesson that maybe you learned from Star Wars. Or you can even talk about what kinds of topics you'd like us to cover, where we just discuss them off the cuff. We're always willing to take ideas from people. You can leave in the comments of these videos. You can join our Discord server. The link is in the description. Join that. We're on that a lot. I mean, we talk about Star Wars there. Sometimes we follow up with stuff. I have a Call of Duty lobby there. A lot of times I sign into that when I'm playing. So if you guys want to do that, that's cool. Of course, don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. We got to say it at some point. But at least, unlike a lot of YouTubers, we're waiting till the end of the show. I actually had said somebody point that out in one of our comments once, that they appreciated that we actually wait till the end. Because a lot of, I don't know if you'd see it or not, but a lot of YouTubers, they're like,
they'll interrupt the middle of this.
Yeah, well, not only
that
I hate too. Joe Blow does that. It's like a movie channel. It's like a professional movie channel. And you're like all into what they're saying. All of a sudden they come up with the whole like and subscribe graphic. You're like, really? This is making me want to dislike the video. Or more commonly what happens, and this is what I'm talking about, is where they're like 2 sentences in, and all of a sudden it's like, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I'm like, why? I don't even know if I'm into what I'm watching yet. Yeah. Like, I get, people say the algorithm likes that, but to me that's ridiculous. It's like, no. Now, of course, people are only watching a couple minutes of the video. They never get to this part, but hey, whatever. This is a hill I'll die on. I will not say this thing. It will be at the end of the show. Please hit like, please hit subscribe. It does help the algorithm. The watch hours are coming up, guys. We're over 2,000 watch hours. Not much over 2,000, but whatever y'all are doing, keep doing it. And do it again. Do it twice, all right? So yeah, I mean, you sent me something earlier today about the Rey movie and the writer on that. Was that something you were thinking of? Maybe we discuss
a possibility for next Sunday.
All right, well, maybe that's what we'll do then. Next Sunday, there is an update. There's a new writer on the Rey movie.
But he's giving his thoughts on his
he is on his approach.
So
yeah. And
that'll be interesting to
it is. We can get into that. Yep. We can get into that. We can dissect it, but just as a little bit of a tidbit, it does sound somewhat promising. I don't know about you, but I kind of like where he seems to be going with this.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. But until then, you guys know the drill. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.